This is the Secular Nation Podcast, an official production of the Atheist Alliance of America, bringing you breaking news and stories about the intersection of the atheist free thought movement and government action. Here are your hosts, Justin Clark and Jeremy Casey. Hey everybody, this is Secular Nation. I'm your host, Justin Clark. Jeremy is taking the week off because we have a very special episode for you this week. I did a quick interview with Samuel Ronan, who is running for chairman of the Democratic National Committee. And he shared with me his views on what he thinks is wrong with the Democratic Party and what he wants to do as chairman of the DNC to fix them. That's coming a little bit later in the show. But first, we're going to talk just a little bit about what's wrong with the Democratic Party. You know, over the last couple years, we've talked about the structural problems within the Republican Party, particularly within the primary process. But we haven't spent as much time talking about sort of the deep and structural insecurities within the Democratic Party. And one of the problems is that over the last 8 years, Democrats have been absolutely devastated in state and local races. If you look at the U.S. map, over half are Republican states with Republican governors, with Republican legislatures, and the Democrats have lost somewhere around over 900 local positions over the last 8 years. So it's been really, really problematic for the Democratic Party. And it seems like, to a certain extent, that we're not really going to change anything anytime soon. But we do have some hope. The two main frontrunners in the race for the chair of the Democratic National Committee are Representative Keith Ellison and former Labor Secretary Tom Perez. Representative Keith Ellison is from Minnesota. He is one of the first open Muslims in the United States Congress. He was one of the few who endorsed Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary last year, and in many ways is one of the more progressive voices within the Democratic Party. I think he could be a decent DNC chair for sure, but he does have some problems, particularly his early years with his associations with the Nation of Islam and Louis Farrakhan, and some of the more extremist views associated with that religious group. But Ellison has since then distanced himself from the Nation of Islam and is very much committed to trying to change the party. He did an interview recently with Ezra Klein of Vox where he talked about how the Democratic National Committee needs to stop being the Democratic Presidential Committee. It needs to stop being so singularly focused on the presidency and start focusing far more on state and local races. He talks in this interview, a lot about sort of the party infrastructure and how much of the state and local and county Democratic parties don't have the resources they need, both in just sheer people as well as technology and as well as just monetary resources in order to get the job done. The other person running for DNC chair, who's really big up on the list, is former Labor Secretary Tom Perez, who to many represents sort of more of a moderate wing. President Obama spoke rather favorably of him in one of his last press conferences as president before he left office. And Tom Perez, in some respects, sort of looks like the frontrunner in the race. And I'm going to now go to an article from NBC News. It's by Alex Seitz-Wald. Race for DNC chair heads behind closed doors in final stretch. So I'm going to be quoting the article here now. Quote, with the public forums winding down and just over a week of campaigning left, the race to lead the Democratic National Committee is moving from the public eye to the proverbial back room. No one candidate out of the 10 still in the running has yet to secure the promise of 224 party member votes needed to win a majority on the first round of balloting. This means the race's two frontrunners, Minnesota Representative Keith Ellison and former Labor Secretary Tom Perez, are looking to pick up support from lesser-known candidates. While Perez and Ellison are sort of the frontrunners in this race, at least in the eyes of many within the party and most in the press, as the article I've been quoting has demonstrated to a certain extent, there is a couple other people in this race who are key players. One of them is Pete Buttigieg, and I hope I'm saying his last name right. I really hope I'm saying his last name right. And he is from my neck of the woods. He's from South Bend, Indiana. He is the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. And one of the things that's really cool about Pete is that he is one of the first openly gay mayors, and he's the first openly gay executive in the state of Indiana. And one of the things that I think Pete brings to the table that Ellison and Perez don't is this sense of the Midwest. Because if you look at where Hillary Clinton and Democrats didn't do very well in this past election, it's pretty much in the Midwest. I mean, Trump won Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Iowa. These were states that consistently and very strongly went for Obama twice, and yet Trump won them. So where did the party go wrong? And so Pete might have some ideas about that. One of the things I think that the article kind of talks about is that he's kind of really into it to try to change the structure of it. And one of the things he kind of noted is that it's kind of a different type of position. You're not a president, but you're not sort of the lowest thing ever. Quoting the article here, this is Mayor Pete Buttigieg here. He's saying, quote, "The race is like a cross between running for president and running for high school student council." And, you know, he's kind of the interesting guy. I mean, I like Pete, and I think Pete would be a guy who would be very connected to some of the more weak aspects of the Democratic Party's outreach right now. And the party certainly needs that. As a longtime Democrat, and, you know, for those who listen to the show, you know, if you're Republican or Libertarian or Socialist or whatever, I want you to know that it's very important for me to share all different voices. And that's what this show is going to be about. But for particularly this week, we're going to be focusing on the Democratic Party. And as a member of the Democratic Party, full disclosure, I think it behooves me to sort of look back and reflect upon what my party did wrong in the 2016 election and sort of what we can do to go forward. And the main reason I believe that is because the Democratic Party is, in many ways, the party that most aligns with the values that I hold, particularly when it comes to separation of church and state, and just broader secularism, tolerance, and a sense of you know, economic and social justice. These are all things that I care about. And I find that the Republican Party could certainly be a viable alternative to the Democrats, but the Republican Party has, over the last 40 years or so, become far too dedicated and, in my opinion, sort of beholden to the evangelical right. And if you look at how they voted for Trump, I mean, evangelicals went for Trump by 81%. I don't think that there's been a president in a long time that has inspired evangelicals in the way that Donald Trump does. I mean, certainly not since George W. Bush, and especially since Ronald Reagan. Even though Trump doesn't strike me as being that particularly religious. But the Democratic Party has problems. And one of the problems it has is that it has a failure to sort of brand itself as being different from the Republican Party. In a lot of ways, what happened with the Democrats was that they stopped being Democrats. They stopped differentiating themselves. And even though Obama was a very successful president and was very popular, especially once he left office, he had very high approval ratings when he left office, and was very much beloved by, in many ways, a big portion of the American people. But the party as a whole is sort of failing to find its leaders. You know, there's Elizabeth Warren, there's Chuck Schumer, there's a bunch of people who sort of act in some ways as if they're in the leadership role, but they're not really carrying it out to their full potential. And I think that one of the ways the Democrats can do better in the next elections, particularly the midterm elections, because the midterms are very, very important, especially when it comes to local issues. You know, if you're talking about laws that violate a woman's right to choose, laws that violate reproductive health broadly in states, we've seen an absolute decimation of reproductive health rights for women over the last 4 or 5 years. And they've all happened in the states, and they've all happened because the Democrats were so devoted to making sure that they protected and made sure to provide success to the president that they weren't that interested in protecting the local parts of the party. I think they got a little displaced. I think they got a little jaded. I think they got a little hubristic. And so they have to change. And, whether it's Perez or Ellison or Buttigieg or Samuel Ronan, who you'll be hearing from here in a little bit, there has to be some huge shakeups within the party in order to sort of make it more viable. And so these are sort of what I think we should do with the Democratic Party and what the Democratic Party needs. And for those who listen to the show who are conservatives or Republicans, email me at thedailyclark@gmail.com. If you are a Secular Nation listener who is a Republican or Libertarian, email me about what you think the Democrats could do to maybe reach out to you. Or more importantly, maybe reach out to me and talk to me about what you think the Republican Party could do, or the Libertarian Party could do, or the Green Party could do, if you're a Green Party supporter, what they could do to help their parties to sort of favor and to advance the secular values that we all hold. So please email me, because I want to make sure that we're not just doing Democrats here. I mean, I'm a Democrat, I'm a liberal, but I just want you to know that matters. With that out of the way, what I think needs to happen with the Democratic Party is a few things. One, they need to grow a set of balls. This is a thing that has driven me crazy for years now. Republicans have lost their mind, and the Democrats have lost their balls. They have no sense of, or for a long time at least, they had no sense of courage, and they had no sense of fortitude. They looked weak. And when you look weak, you lose to the American people. Strength is a virtue. Obama had that strength, and he didn't have to show it in the sort of the dumbass way that Trump does, or that some Republicans do. Obama's strength came from his sheer force of will. And it wasn't a will where he was like beating you over the head with it, but it was a quiet strength and a quiet confidence. And that quiet confidence is something that we can cultivate within the party as well. Not everybody has to be an Elizabeth Warren. Not everybody has to be like a Bernie Sanders or a Nina Turner. They don't. We can have quieter but just as effective voices within the party. And I think that's so important going forward. The other thing that needs to happen, and this is something that I know that Keith Ellison has talked about, and Sam talked with me earlier on this evening, was we need, as a party, the Democrats need to focus again on local races. They need to start focusing on your local school districts, your local city councils, your local mayoralships, your governor's races, your state legislatures. They need to start focusing on those again. Because one of the things about our democratic republic and our federalist system of government is that it has the separation of powers. So states do have an incredible amount of sway in what they're able to do. That's why California is so different than Texas, and Texas is so different than New York or Florida. They're all different. And that's good in a lot of ways, that they can sort of become laboratories of democracy. But the inverse of that is that we've had a lot of restrictions on reproductive health, on real religious freedom, because we've seen a lot of religious privilege laws be passed. We had one in my state of Indiana, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Other states try to pass it as well. We've seen the pullback of workers' rights. We've seen violations of separation of church and state consistently. And one of the ways that you fight back against that is having more diverse voices within local government. When you have a local city or a town where all of the city council members, or almost all of the city council members, are Republicans, that's a problem. Not necessarily because the Republicans are bad, but because there's a lack of diversity of thought. And so when you have a more varying degree of voices that are sort of putting, their thoughts on the table, you can create a much more vibrant and diverse and, quite frankly, more forward-thinking vision of your local town or your city or your county or your state. That's how the Democrats are going to win back the White House. That's how the Democrats are going to win back Congress. They have to do it one district at a time, one school board at a time, one county seat at a time. That's how you do it. And there needs to be more grassroots organizing. if the Bernie Sanders campaign has taught us anything, it's that people are hungering for a level of grassroots politics that we haven't seen in a long time. The Obama campaign taught us that. The Bernie Sanders campaign taught us that. And honestly, in a lot of ways, the Donald Trump campaign also showed this too. Was this connection to the heartland, to regular people, the people who aren't on the coasts or in the cities. That's not to say that people in the coasts or cities are bad. That's just saying that the Bernie Sanders campaign appealed to all of those people, but didn't use the sort of racist and xenophobic and homophobic and anti-Muslim sort of sentiments that the Trump campaign did. And so I think there's a voice for that. There's a place for that. The other thing that needs to happen within the Democratic Party is that it needs to get younger. One of the things that absolutely distressed me about this presidential election is that if you look at who the hottest voice on our side was, on the Democratic side was a 74-year-old socialist from Vermont. And then the person who ended up winning the nomination was a 67-year-old woman, which that's not a problem. But all of the major candidates on the Democratic side, with maybe the exception of Martin O'Malley, who I think is in his early 50s, they're all fairly old. And so that's what the Democratic Party is going to need as well, is they're going to need to harness the wisdom of the older end of their party, while at the same time invigorating and supporting and helping the younger wing of their party. I think that's incredibly important. I'm 26, and I think that, and I've been a lifelong Democrat. I've voted since 2008, and I think that the Democratic Party benefits from youth. The other thing that they need to do, and this relates to the show, the topic, the focus of our podcast, atheism and secularism, is that the Democratic Party needs to reach out and embrace the atheists, the agnostics, the skeptics, the nuns, right? If you look at the Pew Research studies or you look at the PRRI studies, nearly a quarter of Americans identify as non-religious. That's atheist, agnostic, free thinker, deist, humanist, spiritual but not religious. I worship my fucking tree. Like, that's who they are. And people just don't want to get up on fucking Sunday, as Bill Maher says. It's 25%. But if you look at the 2012 election, which we don't have data yet for the 2016 election, but if you look at the 2012 election, secular voters only accounted for about 12% of the vote in the presidential election in 2012. So that's almost half of our voting bloc is not voting. Not at all. Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. They're not voting. And one of the ways the Democratic Party is going to succeed in the future, and honestly, I think this is something the Republicans should do too, is to reach out to the atheist movement, to reach out to the secular movement, because we are a growing body of Americans. And I think it would be, disastrous if they sort of turned a blind eye to us, especially when rates of non-belief and youth are key correlates to each other. People my age, nearly a third of them are non-religious. So we need to reach out to those people as well. And the Democratic Party has begun to do that. I saw some speeches at the Democratic National Convention this past year mentioning atheists and mentioning non-believers. And the president has done it multiple times. He's even mentioned us at the National Prayer Breakfast. So Democrats are getting onto that train. It's pandering, but at this stage, I would gladly take pandering. Gladly take pandering. So those are the things I think are going to be able to fix the Democratic Party. These are the things that they need to do to fix the system. Because if they don't, they're sort of going to languish. They're going to be a national party, but they're not going to be a local party. And they're going to continue to sort of look irrelevant to the American people, With that in mind, we're going to switch gears, and I am going to give you my brief interview with Samuel Ronan. Samuel Ronan is an immigrant. He is also a member of the Air Force. He's now in the reserves, and he is currently running as one of the 10 candidates for the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. He shares with me his thoughts about how to fix the Democratic Party, what we can do to go forward, and why he's the right man for the job. So without further ado, here's Sam Ronan. Sam Ronan, thank you so much for joining the podcast. I really appreciate you being here. If you'd be so kind to just give us a little bit of your background and then kind of talk about what you think is wrong with the Democratic Party. Because I've been talking on a couple different podcasts over the last couple of years about what I think are some of the structural problems with the Democratic Party. And I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So the main structural problem with the party is, quite frankly, we don't have any presence anywhere in the local communities, and that's not just rural America, which I was actually corrected on that fact. This is also in downtown New York City. I'm in the middle of Brooklyn, and I was meeting with Ali Nazir, who ran for Congress, and even the people that did that particular event said they had no idea how to get involved in their local community. So we lack a presence even in the Big Apple, where you would think it would be a natural ally, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the fundamental problem. Sure, we aren't in rural America, but we aren't anywhere that's local. We only have a presence at the state and the national levels. And now take that another way. A lot of people have no idea how to even get involved. There is no contact list. There is no centralization. And we don't have any means of building it. We only have 1%. So I will leave it at that.
Okay, that's good. So just give me a little bit of background on yourself. Who are you and why do you think you're right for the NC chair?
Really and truly, when I say I'm grassroots, when I say I'm just a guy, that is the absolute and unbridled truth. I was in the military for 7 years, or still in the military, and I got out because there was a need and it wasn't being fulfilled. I literally have no background in politics, literally do not know the first thing about the game other than we need to do something about the crap that has been happening. And nobody was stepping up to that plate. So that's exactly what I did, because I swore an oath to my country, and that's what I believe. So that's what I'm doing. And you know what? I've proven that it can be done. I'm not saying it's easy, nor am I saying that it was normal to figure out. I fell on my face several times already. But I'm on the ballot for the DNC chairman that is going to be voted on February 25th in Atlanta, Georgia. So if I can do it, y'all can do it too.
That's fantastic. I'll just do one quick follow-up with you. So we're a podcast that focuses on secularism and church-state separation and issues that affect us within the atheist free thought community. Kind of what's your thoughts about religious freedom and what would you bring to the table for us secular Americans?
Religious freedom is one of the most important rights that we have. It's the First Amendment right. And things like the Muslim ban, which is exactly what it is. It wasn't a ban on these Islamic countries or, terrorist countries, or Middle Eastern. It was a ban on Muslim or Islam. And it's basically the modern day Crusades. That is absolutely unacceptable. And I know Ballotpedia is trying to make me look bad because when I had to write it or add it, I had to put a conservative bias on it. But here's the thing. Religious freedom to me means truly freedom from religion or pure and true inclusivity for all religions, to include atheism, to include agnostic, and no belief whatsoever. But if you're going to give one religion a chance to speak and to be heard, then you have to give them all or none. And in the military, it's usually none. It's based on the mission. If you can be Sikh and if you can grow out your beard for both the Sikh and the Muslim faith, then great. But if your mission requires you to be clean shaven and not take 2 or 3 times during the day to worship as your faith demands, then unfortunately you can't do it. And that's the way we operate, because that's the standard and that's the level, and that's the way we need to approach it from now on. We can't focus on one religion over the other, and we can't favor one religion over another. We have to understand and respect all of them. We need to have the conversation and understand the different faiths. So you're an atheist. I'm Roman Catholic. But I don't go to church every day, and you don't even believe in God. But that doesn't mean we can't have a conversation about the Bible. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean we can't have a conversation about the Quran. And that's where we need to be as a country.
I totally agree. I mean, one of the things I think that I think will sort of defeat extremism on all fronts is secularism, is that sort of sense of tolerance. Sam, what would be your elevator pitch for why you should be DNC chair, and what do Democrats need to do to help you get elected to the head of the DNC?
The whole reason why I ran is the reason why I should also be DNC chair. I went to Columbus. I went to one of those future forums, and I saw the candidates speak. And inevitably, the question was asked, what will you do to bring Democrats back to the party? And they answered their questions. They gave their stump speech, but they never showed true leadership. What I was waiting for, as one of those who felt disenfranchised and put out and that they weren't being helped and treated fairly in the party, what I wanted to hear was one of those people to step up, get up out of their chair, step off the platform, walk to the audience and hand them the microphone and say, what can I do for you so that you feel included back in the party? And that has not been done since I got into the race, and I've been the only one that has been truly emphasizing it and meaning it from the heart. That's why I need to be and should be the next DNC chair. It's not that I have all the resume check boxes filled out and a laundry list from here to apparently Madison Square Garden, but I do understand what it means to be a leader. I do understand that it's about people, and I do understand it's about ideas, and it's about having the conversation. It's not having the right answers. I'm not telling you what to do. It's about listening and engaging with the populace. And until we start doing that, it doesn't matter who's the DNC chair. It doesn't matter what we do, because if we can't regain the trust and most importantly, the respect of the American voter, all else is useless. So with that being said, it's all about people. It's all about inspiring them and giving them a voice, not just a committee chair position of whatever, a literal voice, an actual spot at the table to be treated as an equal. So with that being said, if you want to reach out to me, you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and on my website with Ronan for DNC. So at Ronan for DNC, www.facebook /Ronan for DNC, and www.ronanfordnc.org. And you can also find me on YouTube with Samuel Ronan. Now, how can you help me specifically win? Well, unfortunately, there's only 447 members who are allowed to vote. Those are the DNC members themselves. And what you can do, you can go to that website, you can find the email listing, and you can email them on my behalf and say, look, out of all the candidates that we've seen, to include Keith Ellison and to include Tom Perez, Samuel Ronan is the only candidate that I truly feel will represent me in government and will truly give me a voice back. And even though I may be a progressive, a Bernie-crat, a Dem Exeter, I want to be a part of something great and be a part of the democratic process. So please, select Samuel Ronan on February 25th in Atlanta, Georgia. Something along those lines. Polite, respectful, not antagonistic, not, you screwed our votes over, you stop Bernie. Please don't do any of that. Just be polite, respectful, and talk about the unity, the sense of giving a chance to grow. And if you do that, I guarantee we will have a strong chance of winning, because they're already fighting back. You've never heard of me, and that should be everything you need to know about why I should be DNC chair. Thank you, Justin. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a great night. Good luck with your race. I wish you the best of luck. You're just exactly the kind of kick-ass progressive that needs to shake up the Democratic Party. Thanks.
Take care, man.
Take care, brother. And that's been my interview with Samuel Ronan. Thank you so much for listening this week. It has been really fun. It's kind of a different episode this week. We kind of focused on just a specific issue. And I really want to especially thank Samuel Ronan for taking time out of his extremely busy schedule to do a short interview with me. He is welcome back on the show anytime to talk about church-state issues and to talk about what he wants to do more within the Democratic Party. Go ahead and check us out on atheistallianceamerica.org. We're also available on iTunes. We're available on any place where you can get our RSS feed. I'm learning more about our new website, so I'm getting more in tune with that, and so I can start posting more of these more quickly for you. And then please check out one of our affiliates. I'm an admin for Philosophical Atheism, which is an online community. Check us out at philosophicalatheism.com. You can also see us at Facebook at facebook.com/philosophicalatheism. And check us out on YouTube. If you go to my YouTube, youtube.com/thedailyclark, you can check out all Secular Nation episodes there, as well as my old podcast, An Army of Principles. Next week, Jeremy and I are going to be doing a deep dive on Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch. That's going to be a fascinating episode. I look forward to getting with Jeremy and talking to him about that. Until next week, this has been Justin Clark, and this has been Secular Nation.